Now, in the book, there's a bit I wrote in towards the latter chapters when I'm tying all the different value elements together. And I talk about this fact of titles, right? And I know for years even in corporates, people have spoken about the fact that titles don't matter, which, by the way, is a concept I agree with fundamentally. However, I also see that a lot of people saying that actually it's not entirely true, because titles do matter, and they matter, they've just changed. What do I mean by that? It's amazing how many people still want to brand themselves as a CEO, for example, right? And it's amazing how, and the new titles that are the innovator, disruptor, founder, and then these titles that you're actually left thinking, well, what do you actually do? What does that actually mean that you do? Now, I kind of get it, but it seems to me there's a lot of ego driven by that versus fact. So for example, I've run my own business for years. I've got my title as director. Why? Because legally that's what I am. I'm registered as a director. I file papers every year with ASIC as a director. I am a director and have been for years. It's not a fictitious made up title. It's a legal part of what I actually am responsible for within the setup of the trust and company structure I have. That's why I have it. But what do you make of all these self-anointed titles, right? Because I see, and in the startup community in which you're a part as well, you see it, CEOs are flagging up everywhere, and you go, well, do you actually even know what that, you know what I mean? What do you make of all that, Chris?
CEO of one, yeah.
Yeah.
So it will give you a hell of a lot of insight into what somebody's intent is with their business as to the title that they give themselves in the organization. So is it really about offering value back as your product or service, or is it about that ego-driven sort of side of business as a director or a CEO? I think people see through that as well. And this is probably worth a discussion or a debate at another time, but I support the idea of somebody communicating that they're a founder. I think what that actually does is, as you're speaking to various stakeholders, it'll give them an understanding that this is your vision. You're kind of the person who came up with what you're trying to achieve here as a business, and in turn, you're probably the best representation of the values of that business, being the founder. In some cases, it's a matter of I want to speak to the person who's the decision maker. So a founder will kind of give that perception as well. But I'm not adverse to the idea of someone promoting the fact that they are a founder of an organization as opposed to a director or a CEO.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like if you're a founder, but again, let's get real with that, right? Because not all creativity is innovative.
Mm-hmm.
Not all innovation is disruptive. That is overused.
Mm-hmm.
Yet all creativity has value. But this idea of founder of what, right? If you've taken somebody else's idea, complicated, or you're just aggregating somebody else's technology and you've not actually founded anything, are you a founder? You're a founder of a brand that aggregates. So you know what I mean? It's like, it's a tricky one. I agree with you completely. I think though there's a reality check sometimes, even within that, as to what are you a founder of?
What have you actually discovered?
Researched? Yeah. What have you researched? Yeah. What have you developed?
Mm-hmm.
What have you built?
Yeah.
What have you actually created that is actually yours,
mm-hmm.
yours alone, or your baby? You know what I mean? And I think there's a big blurred line with that sometimes, because even
mm-hmm.
that idea of founder, I'm sure. So I agree with you. Absolutely. It's important to let people know if you've done that and you've done the hard yards. I just see these are often titles that are often overused is all I think. And particularly in that space, people trying to break through. Less so, you don't see it as much in established organizations, for example, right? You don't see that same play on titles as much. Yep. Is that your experience as well? What do you reckon?
Yeah, and I think coming back again to the point before around recognizing that you can't be all things in your business. I think it's important we often talk about the 5 or 6 key roles you're going to need in scaling and building your business. And we talk about the visionary, which, for want of a better word, is that founder piece. Then you've got the hustler, the person out there who's kind of generating the sales, who's sharing the story piece, is that frontline involvement in the business. In the early stages, certainly a visionary / hustler is the norm and is expected. You've got the magician that sits in underneath. You've got the builder, you've got the designer, you've got the enabler. So respecting these roles, but also recognizing these roles, is an ability to be able to stop, say, someone wanting to come and talk about improvements to your product to the hustler. He can only go so far with that. Ultimately, that needs to be shared across with the builder, with the designer. And there's a level of respect that comes from that bow tie effect of working with the right people in your organization. So as you're building out, if you're building a software as a service that has some sort of integration in with other software, those developers are not going to want to talk to the marketing guy. They're going to want to talk to the people who are actually building and designing the software. So there's a level that you can't get to, funky and ambiguous with your titles.
Yes.
Nobody knows who they're actually talking to.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you can't scale that in a way where people are speaking to the right people at the right time. So it needs to be identified in some way with a level of respect for the role that people are playing, without it actually being something that is ego-driven, as in, I'm a leader,